The wind screamed against the cabin walls like a living thing. Ellie Brooks sat in silence by the fire, wrapped in a wool blanket that smelled faintly of cedar and age. Outside, the Blue Ridge Mountains groaned beneath a blanket of heavy snow. Wind-churned flurries slapped the windows, erasing the world beyond into white nothingness. She liked it that way. The isolation wasn't just a choice, it had become a condition. 3 years ago, she'd been Dr. Eleanor Brooks, head of surgery at a veterinary trauma center. Now, she was just Ellie, a woman in a flannel shirt with too many ghosts and a cabin full of silence. A single mistake, shaking hands. A scalpel dropped at the worst moment, had ended her career and carved a hollow she hadn't figured out how to fill. She sipped lukewarm tea. Another storm. Another night of pretending she didn't want the world to find her. Then came the sound. Distant at first. Muffled. But unmistakable. A howl. Ellie froze. It wasn't the long, lonesome cry of a lone wolf. This was different. Frantic. Layered. And sharp. Panic. Pain. It echoed across the ridge and was swallowed quickly by the wind. She stood, heart pounding, unsure why. She'd heard animals out here before. Coyotes, owls, even a bear once, snorting around the compost bin. But this wasn't wild. It was desperate. She tried to dismiss it. Sat back down. The fire cracked softly, her tea steamed. The howl came again, closer this time. Several voices, not one, but many, blending into a roar. Primal cry of fear and grief. Her breath caught. She rose again, already reaching for her coat before she'd decided to. She grabbed her flashlight, yanked boots over wool socks, and opened the front door. The wind hit her like a slap. Snow pelted her face, stung her cheeks. She flipped the flashlight on and started into the trees, guided by instinct more than logic. The beam cut through the white, flickering against trunks and drifts. The forest was a blur of motionless black and thrashing white. Her boots crunched through knee-deep snow as she moved uphill, the howling growing louder with each step. Then, suddenly, it stopped. She halted, breath visible in the cold. A shape, just beyond a fallen log. Beneath a pine tree. Something large and dark slumped in the snow. Her beam caught a glint. Eyes. Dozens of them, reflecting back in silence. Dogs. 5 of them, huddled close, half buried in the snow. Trembling. They didn't run, didn't bark, they simply stared. One of them let out a soft, keening whine. Ellie stepped closer. The beam dropping to the center of the pack, and stopped. There, partially covered in snow, lay a man, old, still, eyes closed, face pale with the blue tinge of death. He looked like he had fallen beside the tree and simply, never gotten back up. The dogs had stayed. She lowered the flashlight. Her throat tightened. They were mixed breeds, shepherd, husky, Labrador, large, built for cold, but thin, ribs showing. One had a torn ear. Another limped as it shifted to put itself between her and the man. "Easy," Ellie said softly, crouching. Her voice cracked from disuse. The dogs didn't growl, they just watched her. wary but exhausted. She knew that look. They'd been waiting for help. Ellie reached out slowly, letting one sniff her glove. It didn't bite, didn't back away, just rested its nose there for a moment. Then dropped its head. She looked at the man. No pulse, no breath. His body was stiff. He'd probably been gone a day. Maybe more. But the dogs hadn't left him. Her flashlight flickered. She tapped it, and the light steadied. She took a deep breath. Turned her gaze to the dogs. "All right," she said quietly. "Let's get you out of this." They didn't understand the words. But something in her tone, calm, sure, made them move. Not fast, not eager, but one by one, they stood. Ellie took off her coat. Wrapped it around the smallest one. Who was shaking the worst? The others followed her as she turned back toward the cabin, keeping pace behind her in the snow like shadows reborn. The storm howled louder, but Ellie didn't hear it the same way now. She wasn't alone anymore. The cabin felt smaller with 5 dogs inside. Ellie had laid down towels, blankets, anything she could find to dry them. The fire had been stoked to full strength, casting flickering amber light across the warm wooden floor. Still, the air was heavy, not just with snowmelt and wet fur, but with tension. The dogs sat scattered in corners, watching her, silent, unsure. She moved slowly, deliberately. Bolt, the biggest of the group, had positioned himself between her and the others. His black and tan coat was thick with ice, his one good eye tracking every movement she made. The other socket was empty, scarred over, old damage, a fighter's wound. "I'm not here to hurt you," Ellie murmured. He didn't growl, but his body was a spring coiled tight. She gave him space. River lay curled near the fireplace, her hind leg bent at an unnatural angle. Ellie had seen that kind of injury before, likely an old break that hadn't healed right. The swelling was long gone, but the limp was permanent. Still, River didn't whimper. She watched Ellie with quiet, feminine defiance, like pain was just something to be lived with. Ash and coal, nearly identical grays with ice-blue eyes, stayed pressed together by the door. Every time Ellie stepped too close, they stiffened. Ash would lower his head, and Cole would growl, just low enough to mean back off. She did. And then there was Finn, smallest of the 5. Finn had wedged himself into the space beneath Ellie's writing desk and trembled like a leaf. His fur was matted near the neck, and when she got close enough, she saw the worn indentation beneath the collar, raw skin, scabbed over. A chain. Ellie sat cross-legged by the fire and waited. She didn't speak, didn't coax, just let the cabin warm. The dogs stayed where they were, even as the wind howled outside and the walls creaked. The storm raged, but the cabin, somehow, held quiet. Ellie reached for her mug of tea. Her hands were steadier than they had been in weeks. That night, the nightmares came. They always did. In her sleep, she was back in the OR. The lights too bright, her hands slipping, a scalpel clattering to the floor, a heartbeat monitor flatlining, a voice, her own, shaking as she said she couldn't continue the procedure. The look on her assistant's face. The shame. She woke with a gasp. The fire was low, the cabin dark. She sat up, sweat damp, the sheets tangled around her. And then, a sound. Breathing. Not hers. She looked to the doorway of the bedroom. Bolt was there, sitting, watching. She stared at him. He didn't move, just stayed, as if guarding. For the first time in a long time, Ellie didn't feel completely alone. The next morning, she started caring for them properly. One by one, Bolt let her near first. Warily, he allowed her to clean the frost from his fur, even touch the skin around the missing eye. She whispered as she worked, not instructions, not commands, just presence. River was trickier, but when Ellie brought over a warm compress, the injured dog didn't flinch. Ellie placed it gently against the bad leg. Murmuring apologies, River exhaled through her nose. Not approval, but permission. Ash and Cole were last. It took hours before they let her near. And even then, only with food in her hand. Her eyes down, body angled away, when Cole finally took a piece of boiled chicken from her palm. Ash followed a moment later. Like twins in lockstep, Finn stayed hidden. Ellie placed water and soft food by the desk. Then backed away. At night, she'd hear him inch out. She left the lamp on low so he wouldn't be alone in the dark. The days passed. She cleaned their wounds, wrapped paws, sat in silence with them, spoke to them only when necessary. She didn't try to name them, until the names simply came. Bolt, because of the way he moved, direct, with purpose. River, because of the way her eyes never stopped flowing with quiet observation. Ash and Cole, because they were born from the same flame. And Finn, because he was just a flicker, trying not to go out. She hadn't meant to keep them. Not really. She told herself this was temporary. That she'd call someone. Rescue services. Maybe the local ranger station. Once the storm ended. But every time she reached for the radio, her hand hesitated. She knew what would happen. They'd be separated, caged, quarantined, evaluated for adoptability. Finn wouldn't survive it. River would be deemed unfit. Ash and Cole wouldn't let anyone near them. And Bolt wouldn't tolerate a leash again. Ellie didn't say it aloud. But her decision was already made. The storm passed. The roads cleared. She had the chance. But she stayed. And so did they. The cabin changed. So did she. The days became routine. Feeding. Cleaning. Short walks into the woods when the snow melted. Her hands remembered how to care. Her mind quieted. Sometimes, in the quiet, Finn would curl up at her feet. Ash and Cole would sleep near the door, no longer guarding it, but keeping it between them and whatever lay outside. River would watch the fire, her head on her paws. And Bolt would sit beside Ellie, silent as ever. She never asked for trust. But she earned it. And in return, they gave her something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not in words. But in breath. In presence. In the quiet understanding between broken things that choose not to break each other. The knock came mid-morning. Ellie was chopping firewood out back. Her sleeves rolled, cheeks flushed with cold. The air was still. The snow half melted from the early spring thaw. Bolt barked once, sharp and low, from inside the cabin. A signal. Not danger. Just strangers. Ellie set the axe aside and wiped her hands on her jeans. By the time she reached the front of the cabin, she saw the sheriff's truck parked on the gravel turnout. Tires dusted with frost. Two figures stepped out. Sheriff Tom Harris, gray-bearded. Slow-moving, his presence more weight than words. And beside him, Dr. Lily Monroe, the town's veterinary officer, clipboard in hand, her expression unreadable behind large sunglasses. "Morning, Ellie," Tom called, adjusting his belt. "Didn't mean to startle you." "You didn't," Ellie replied, voice even. She glanced down. Bolt stood in the open doorway, silent but alert. The other dogs were inside, watching, waiting. "We heard some things," Lily said, stepping forward, boots crunching on gravel, "about you keeping 5 large dogs out here. Unregistered, possibly feral." Ellie didn't flinch. "They're not feral. They were found with a dead body in the woods." "Ellie," Lily continued, "people talk. Say they've gone wild, that they're dangerous. They were cold, starving, scared." Ellie said, "They've never hurt anyone." Lily raised an eyebrow. "You were a vet once." "Ellie, you know the rules. Any animal without documentation, vaccinations, or legal adoption is technically unowned. And dangerous dogs, especially ones with no background, can't just be kept in the woods." Tom cleared his throat. "We're not looking to start trouble. But the town council's worried. Winter hikers spotted movement. Heard howling. Someone said a pack was roaming near the trailheads." "They don't roam," Ellie said firmly. "They stay here." Lily took a step closer to the porch. Bolt did the same, placing himself directly between Ellie and the visitors. His posture was calm but unmistakable, protective. He stood tall, head slightly lowered, eye locked on Lily, tail still, a warning without threat. Lily paused. "Is he always like that?" "He's assessing you," Ellie said, "not attacking. He knows who belongs and who doesn't. I'd say that confirms the fear." Lily muttered, "A pack animal defending a human. That's bonded behavior. And bonded behavior without official ownership or licensing is a liability." Ellie exhaled, jaw tightening. She'd known this day might come. The town had never truly forgotten her, just let her drift out of reach. They'd gossiped, whispered, and now that she had something they didn't understand, something loud and visible, they'd started whispering again. "I'm not giving 'em up," she said quietly. Lily frowned. "Ellie, no." Her voice sharpened. "You can write your reports. You can say they're unregistered. You can argue liability, but if you think I'm handing 'em over to be caged, split, or put down because they don't fit your checklist, you're wrong." There was a beat of silence. Tom shifted uncomfortably. "I've been treating them," Ellie added. "They've gained weight. Their wounds are healing. They follow basic commands. They've shown no aggression to anyone but unfamiliar visitors. They're not loose. They're home." Lily looked down at her clipboard. "Legally, we could impound them. You're not licensed to run a rescue. You're not a practicing vet anymore." "No," Ellie agreed. "But I'm still qualified. And I'm asking for time." Let me finish what I started. Give me 60 days. I'll prove they're stable, that I'm stable." That last sentence hung heavier than the rest. Tom glanced at Lily. She didn't speak for a moment. Inside the cabin, Finn whimpered faintly from beneath the desk. River hobbled closer to the door, leaning into the frame. Ash and Cole stayed just behind the curtain. Their twin stares locked on the newcomers. None barked, none lunged. They were watching Ellie, waiting for her lead. "You'd be responsible," Lily said finally. "Any incident, any harm. I understand. This is going to make people nervous. They've lived through worse," Ellie replied. "So have I." Lily looked at Bolt again. He hadn't moved. Then she sighed. 60 days. But I'm coming back with records. A checklist. And expectations. Ellie nodded once. "Fair." Lily and Tom turned and walked back toward the truck. Bolt held his post until the vehicle pulled away down the slope. Tires cracking old ice. Only then did he step back. Ellie knelt beside him, ran a hand down his back. "Good boy," she whispered. "I've got you." And quietly, in his silence, he told her he knew. The mornings began earlier now. Ellie rose with the frost. Not because she had to, but because something inside her wanted to. Purpose pulled her out of bed before the sun had finished touching the tops of the pines. 5 dogs waited for her outside the cabin, lined up in various states of attention, tails wagging or still, depending on the mood. She had a clipboard now. Notes, timetables, schedules. It had been nearly a month since Sheriff Harris and Lily Monroe had shown up at her door with warnings and citations. 60 days. That was the window she'd been given to prove herself. To prove them. But Ellie didn't see it as a deadline anymore. It felt like a beginning. She started with Finn, the smallest of the group, once hidden beneath desks and blankets. Now followed her from room to room like a shadow learning how to be light. Ellie used quiet cues, touch desensitization, and behavioral reinforcement. Over time, Finn stopped flinching at loud sounds. He started nudging her hand for comfort. Then eventually for instruction. Ellie realized something remarkable. He wasn't just becoming brave. He was becoming attentive. So she changed his training. Finn was now learning to be a service dog for children with autism. He responded calmly to pressure touch commands, learned to interrupt repetitive motions, and gently ground anxious behaviors with his presence. Ellie knew he wouldn't be rehomed unless the match was perfect, but that day would come. For now, he was learning what it meant to be someone's anchor. River was next. Her hind leg was useless. But her spirit wasn't. Ellie had ordered parts online. Hand-assembled a custom-fit canine wheelchair using PVC tubing. Padded straps. And a rugged frame. The first time she buckled River in, the dog froze, panicked. But Ellie was patient. She sat beside her, hour after hour. Soft encouragement. Treats, time, and then movement. A hesitant step, a stumble, and then River was gliding across the clearing like a sailboat catching its first wind. She barked, short, bright, joyous. For the first time, Ellie saw her smile. Ash and Cole remained the most challenging. They still operated as a unit, often moving with eerie synchronicity, like mirrored shadows. But Ellie stopped trying to break that. Instead, she harnessed it, using barrier training and command drills. She turned their hypervigilance into focused protection. They began responding to hand signals, reacting only to specific stimuli. Ash would patrol while Cole stayed near Ellie, or reversed depending on the time of day. Together, they formed a silent perimeter around the property. They didn't just feel safe anymore. They made her feel safe. And then there was Bolt. Still the quietest. Still the anchor. But something had changed. Bolt had begun responding to Ellie's episodes, the moments when her chest tightened. Breath grew short, and memories crawled out of corners. He would approach without being called, nudge her arm, press his head gently into her lap, sit with her until the storm passed. She didn't train him to do it. He just did. She began pairing the behavior with signals, reinforcing the response. Soon, he could detect the earliest signs, shifts in her breathing, her posture. He became her therapy, her shield, her reason to stay grounded. And the town, it started to notice. First, it was just hikers passing through, surprised by the calm pack lounging outside the cabin. Then came the local paper. Someone had tipped him off. A quiet photo made the community board. Ellie kneeling beside River's wheelchair while Finn sat, proud and upright, beside a child visiting with his parents. The caption read, "Second Lives at the Ridge." Then, one morning, Lily Monroe returned, not with a clipboard, with coffee. Ellie met her on the porch, Bolt by her side. Lily looked tired, but softer. She offered a smile as she handed over the cup. "I've been hearing things," she said. "Good things." Ellie raised an eyebrow. "You here to shut us down?" "No," Lily said. "I'm here to help you go public." Ellie blinked. Lily pulled out a folder. Inside were forms, registration, permits, legal waivers, even grant options. "I ran the numbers. Your results. Your notes. Your background. You're not just keeping them. You're rebuilding them, with the right support. This could be a training center. Maybe even a licensed rehabilitation project." Ellie said nothing for a long moment. Then, finally, "What changed your mind?" Lily looked at the dogs. Finn approached her first, sat at her feet. River wheeled in a lazy circle nearby, tail wagging. Ash and Cole stood at the tree line, watching but not growling. And Bolt never left Ellie's side. "I saw a pack that listened," Lily said. "Not to dominance, not to fear, but to care. And that changes everything." Ellie looked out over the property. Snow was gone now. Grass was breaking through the earth. The trees were greener. Everything was still hard, but it was no longer hopeless. "I never planned any of this," Ellie said. "That's usually how the good things start," Lily replied. Ellie glanced down at Bolt, then out toward the woods where the wind no longer sounded like ghosts. "All right," she said, "let's do it right." The morning of the opening ceremony was quiet. Spring had finally settled over the Blue Ridge Mountains. Wildflowers freckled the hillside like confetti nature had thrown in celebration. A light breeze carried the scent of pine. And Ellie stood at the edge of the new clearing, cleared, leveled, and lined with a simple wooden fence, watching the sun climb over the ridge. The sign wasn't grand, just hand-painted and nailed between two cedar posts. Second Lives — rehabilitation and training for rescue dogs. It had taken months. Endless paperwork, volunteer hours, whispered doubts. But it was real now. What started with 5 broken animals and 1 woman hiding from the world had become a movement. Or at least the beginning of one. A small crowd gathered near the cabin, neighbors, local reporters, a few families from town. People who, months ago, might have crossed the street at the sight of Ellie or muttered, "Crazy dog lady," under their breath. Now, they stood with coffee and cautious smiles, curiosity in their eyes. And at the center of it all were the dogs. Finn stood beside a girl with autism, gently pressing his head against her side whenever she started to fidget. She giggled, comforted. River wheeled by like a parade marshal, tail held high, her harness bearing a patch that read "Mobility Support, in Training." Ash and Cole flanked the perimeter, watchful but calm, wearing matching vests labeled Canine Guardian, staff only. Bolt sat beside Ellie, still, present, always. Lily Monroe stepped up to a small podium and adjusted the microphone. She kept the speech short and simple, filled with words like second chances, community, and what happens when someone believes in broken things. But no one really listened to the words. Everyone was watching what came next. Ellie gave Bolt a gentle nudge. And he stood. Beside him, a boy of 10 stepped forward, thin, pale, his shoulders curled inward. He had arrived 3 weeks ago with his parents. Veterans of more than just war. The boy had been silent, shaken, the kind of quiet that came from trauma, not shyness, until Bolt lay beside him during a visit and didn't move for hours. Now, the boy walked, slow, careful steps, but not alone. Bolt paced beside him, his one eye scanning the crowd, his head occasionally brushing the boy's hand. The crowd hushed. It wasn't dramatic. No applause. No camera flash. Just stillness, recognition, and something deeper, healing made visible. Ellie stood watching, hands folded in front of her, heart full and aching. She didn't need to speak. This was her speech. After the crowd drifted away, after the coffee thermoses were empty and the folding chairs stacked, Ellie remained in the training field. The sun was dipping low now, casting golden light over the grass. The dogs were resting nearby, some sprawled in the shade, others wandering lazily, as if sensing it was the end of something important. Or the beginning of something more. She went inside the cabin and sat at her desk, pulling out the worn leather journal she hadn't touched in weeks. She flipped past pages filled with frantic notes, behavior logs, early doubts, past scrawled feeding schedules and sketches of River's first wheelchair prototype. She found the last blank page. She wrote slowly, April 28. Today, Second Lives opened its gates. It's not much, a fence, a shed, a training path through the woods, but it's real. They came, the town came, No one called us dangerous. No one asked if I was still fit. They just watched. And they saw what I've known for months now. Finn is going to change someone's life. River already has. Ash and Cole trust people now, on their terms. And Bolt saved a boy today just by being who he is. They don't need fixing. They never did. They just needed someone to see the parts of them that still worked. I thought I was saving them. But they saved me first. Ellie. She set the pen down and leaned back. Outside. Bolt padded in and rested his head on her lap. She scratched behind his ear. And for a moment, they stayed like that. Just the two of them. Not broken. Not wild. Just home. Because home wasn't a place. It was a pack. And Ellie had finally found hers.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.